Hey everybody, welcome to the Girl Dad Girls. It's your host Dani B. We have Brie Saint Marie, and sadly, Ravishing Rachel couldn't join us tonight. Sad, but we're gonna do our best in her absence. With us today, we have Meadows of Ashes 17, and yeah, we're so happy to have you here. Welcome to the
Thank
show.
you. I'm
Uh,
happy to be here.
yeah,
Mm,
it's we've
finally.
been waiting a long time for this, so thank you for fitting us in. Now, yeah, before we dive in, would you give us like a little rundown of who you are? What makes you tick?
What makes me tick? What doesn't make me tick? My
Uh,
name is Ashley. I have been transitioning for 3 years. I just hit my 3 year mark on HRT. I was out socially for just a couple of months before that, so it's like basically the same thing. I, as of a couple of months ago, am retired. Very
oh,
excited
holy
about
crap!
that.
That's
Yes.
awesome.
I had
Damn.
decided I've had enough of capitalism and I don't want to play anymore.
Mm.
But I don't know, like a lot of the things about see, I'm the kind of person, like I feel like I'm full of very interesting topics and experiences, but then somebody's telling me about yourself, and I'm like,
I
Yeah.
got nothing.
I got
Well,
nothing. Yeah, I'm cute, like I got that
it's
going, but
it's like when somebody says, "Hey, think of an animal, not a polar bear." It's like, well, crap.
like now all I can think of is polar bears.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
like
Um,
think something awesome. It's like, damn it, I can't think of anything awesome.
yeah, I no, I enjoy it. So I originally am from the central part of California, the state of California. I lived there for the first 27, 28 years of my life. And then I moved to Tacoma, Washington, which is where I'm residing at the
Oof.
moment. I've been here for about 7 years or so and getting ready to have some adventures. And I'll be kind of in and out of the area, but that is where I live now. I love it here so much. It just really, there's a lot of community here. Like I've made so many friends. I'm very, very fortunate that this was the place that I kind of like got my deal together and came out and started transitioning because I've been able to find a lot of community here. And I'm really, really excited about that.
So is it a big like the trans community is big or just the LGBT community? Both.
Both, yeah, absolutely. Like I cannot go to my local Target without running into like multiple other trans
Oh,
people.
I
They're
love that.
everywhere up here.
I'm so
Yeah, it's so nice.
jealous.
So
Trans and Tarjay, they just go
I
together.
well, I yeah, right. I picked kind of a silly example because of
Oh,
course there would be
sorry.
trans people at Target.
Together.
Snip,
Complete
snip.
Um,
that scissor.
like for reference, I mean, I live in an apartment building that I would estimate is probably about 100 or so units. And there are, including me, 7 trans feminine people that I'm aware of just
Oh
in
my
this building, 4 of whom are on my
God.
floor.
That's
That's amazing.
amazing. I have to like actually go to like meetups to ever know
Hmm.
that there's a trans person in this town.
I just keep running into them in the elevator when I'm trying to go down to my car.
That is how big is it? How big is that city?
So
Town.
Tacoma is about, I want to say it's a little over 200,000 people.
Okay.
Um,
I'm gonna put a
but
little splash of
the
how many. That's gonna
how,
be one of
yeah,
those little infographics. Did you know?
yeah, like you can see floating on the screen somewhere the number that's actually correct and how wrong it was.
Yeah.
Um, the
The
Seattle
more
metro
you know.
area, I think, is about 1.5 million people because there's just a bunch of cities here that just run right into each other.
Oh yeah.
And this whole region is just very, very queer.
Yeah. I have a
Yeah.
bunch of friends. Actually, when I first came out, I went out to Seattle and had two friends who they were born male, and I told them both, and they were very happy for me. And then I went back in the closet, and both of them came out as trans.
As you
Um,
do.
yeah, and so, but they have a couple years on me now, even though it's like, wow, if I hadn't gone back in the closet, but they were just like, yeah, being here in Seattle is just fantastic for it. They are so happy over
Oh,
there.
absolutely. Yeah. Um, yeah, come on back. Like we'll party, come
Yeah,
visit.
that's the
Let
plan.
me
My
know.
lease is up in February 2024,
Okay.
and I am trying to get the hell out of this crap hole that I'm in. Um,
Yeah.
have you lived anywhere besides the West Coast?
No, I've not.
Really?
It's I've moved around like lots of little places around the West Coast. but I have only ever had like residency in California and Washington.
Oh wow, okay. Is that what's spurring the adventure coming up? Is that you've only
Um, yeah, let me actually introduce that since we've already touched on it a
Yeah,
couple of
let's go.
times, and
Yeah,
Dig
get
and
into
in.
it.
for anybody who's not familiar with my shenanigans, this is news. Um, so I
We
currently
shenanigans.
about a week and a half ago, I bought a minivan that I am actually working on converting into like a mobile hotel room type deal so that I can live out of it part time. And then when my lease is up at my current place at the end of December, I am going to um, move back and forth because I am aggressively polyamorous.
That's awesome.
I
I
have
love it.
so
I love aggressively.
presently I use like aggressively, rampantly, like whatever word comes to mind. But I currently have
Violently.
violently polyamorous. I currently have two long-term committed partners. One of them lives here in Tacoma, and the other one lives in Albuquerque. Um, so
Cool. Like step.
yeah,
Like was like
like Steph. Um,
it
I'm going to be what I'm going to be doing is I will be staying here for a few months and then New Mexico for a few months and just kind of moving back and forth between the two because I have a big social network here. I've got a growing one in New Mexico. And then it'll just kind of give me time to spend time with my partners and like hang out with friends and other things like that. I'm really excited to go see Stephanie when I'm down there.
Yeah. Um,
Good.
oh, before we
Please
get
do.
off the van, I like that is so interesting to me how people renovate vans like that. Are you following a plan or are you just kind of winging it?
I am doing it the way I do everything, which is chaotically. I have no plan. I have no previous experience in anything like this. I just finally decided that that's what I was going to do, and now I'm doing it, and I'm figuring it out as I go.
Are you doing like all the electrical and stuff like that like yourself? Or are you getting somebody,
Oh
are you
God,
like
no.
contracting out?
Yeah. So some of the work, I want to do some very basic work to it, like put in a floating floor that's carpeted, that's just kind of nice. The van that I bought has stow and go seats, so I'm thinking that I'm going to take some of them out and use the little pockets that they would normally sit in for extra storage. Um,
That's awesome.
and then I'm going to build in a bed frame, and I want to have somebody install an inverter for me because I don't know how to do that. But then I have basically an ability to like charge my phone and other devices while I'm on the road. Um,
Ooh, you doing
and
solar panels? Do solar panels.
I might put some on it. I'm thinking about it. And then another thing that I'm going to do because I feel pretty safe on the West Coast, specifically like traveling up and down the I-5 corridor. Like those are all big cities. It's all for the most, I mean, it obviously goes through areas where I wouldn't feel as safe, but I'm going to take with me like a small portable camp toilet type deal so that when I'm traveling through places where I don't feel as safe, I can just like do my business in the van and then, just like take the bag, throw it in a trash can and keep going. Because I do intend to make a trip out to the East Coast, maybe in the
Hey.
spring or summer.
Yeah,
And
you
I've got,
do.
yeah, I've got a bunch of people out there that I would like to
Yay.
go visit and spend time with because I just have like a growing number of connections on the East Coast. And I want to take the van out there and then just like, move around and spend time with people and do things like that. But there's a lot of open ground that I have to cross between here and there. And some of those areas are not areas that I feel particularly safe
Yeah.
being trans or doing something like, God forbid, I should want to use a restroom.
Ew.
Um, I know, right? So I'm gonna bring one with me. That way I can
Gross.
kind of do what I need to do in the van and feel a lot safer.
I mean, yeah, that makes
Um,
sense. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
exactly. And it's something that'll fold up and I can store because I'm not building in like a full bathroom and I'm not going to plumb it or have water or anything like that. I'm not
Yeah.
intending to live out of the van full time. So
So, in terms of you said you have a big social network. How are you establishing said social network? Is it online? Did you already have a social network that was
it's
built?
primarily online. Mostly through Instagram is how I keep running into people. Like there's the old trope, right? The joke that Instagram is like the trans girl dating app. Um,
It's the best one I've run into so far.
but no, so that's the thing though, right? Is like I have had like an alarming amount of success with dating and just meeting new people in general just through Instagram. I don't know why that's the
Yeah.
case. Because I
I
hate dating
mean,
apps. I don't use them.
I'm about to
But
delete all of them. They're
honestly,
just cesspools of garbage.
I mean, yeah, like
yeah,
around here especially, it's mostly just guys who just kind of want to fetish fuck me. And um but yeah, no, you're exactly right. Like Reddit and Instagram and Reddit. Like I've met two hookups, one hookup via Instagram and one via Reddit. And um you know how many via Bumble, Tinder?
yeah.
Zero. Um
So this,
yeah.
I was just going to say, this is exactly what I was talking about, like in the preliminary conversation before we started recording, because we've been recording for what, like maybe 5, 10 minutes, and I'm already like, sex.
No, let's get into it. Let's do it.
Yeah, and so I actually do have a Reddit account that I do not use at the moment, but it is up there. I created it um a long time ago, and I was like I'm gonna be one of those people who does the before and after stuff, and I just never used it. And then now the issue that I have with Instagram, as much as I like it, is that I can't post nudes there, and I like to post nudes. So I set up a free OnlyFans. Um, so I could post those photos, but I also kind of want to get back into Reddit because that's another place. One, there's good community there, but two, it's also a place that I can post content without having to worry about censorship and stuff. Um,
Can
so
on
I kind of
Twitter
want to
too,
get,
right?
yeah, but it's that whole thing, like,
Yeah, I
um,
get it.
Garbage
I
like
get
I'm kind
it.
llamas.
of, yeah. But I know there's a very big trans community on Reddit because I was following it before I realized that I
Mhm.
was trans, as you do when you're very much cishet. And
Yeah, egg
I
IRL.
exactly. I kind of want to get back in there and make more connections. And like some people I used to follow on Reddit, I have since connected with on Instagram and like actually talk to now. So it's kind of cool. I want to branch out some more. As I'm becoming more
Yeah.
confident in myself and having more time for socializing and stuff now that I'm not working. I'm really looking to make more connections and just find people to hang out with because for me that's like what life is, right? I just want to have fun, in
Yeah.
whatever form that might take.
And so your the two serious partners that you have, did you meet them on Instagram, Reddit, in person?
I met one through a dating app. I know I was just talking shit about dating apps, but I met one on a dating app, and that's my partner who's local. And then my long distance partner in Albuquerque, uh, Joelle Emma Rose is her handle on Instagram. Um, I met her, and she's actually the reason the relationship started because we kind of had followed each other on Instagram and we were in a similar Discord server where we would talk and kind of make flirty little passes at each other. But I was like, she's in Boston. I'm never going to actually meet her, right? It's fine. And then she scheduled a flight out here to Seattle to visit some friends and stuff. And she was
Yeah.
basically like, oh, while you're in the area, you know. So then we wound up hanging out and then we started dating after that. And she told me sometime after we'd been together, she's like, when I originally came to Seattle, like I just wanted to hook up with you. She's like, I was telling my other partner and like all my friends back here, I was showing off your photos and I was like, you see this girl? Like I'm gonna bang her. Um, and I
I'm
was
gonna go
like,
bang her, and that's awesome.
yeah, and I mean, she got what she wanted. But she's like, yeah, all I was after originally was a hookup, and I'm like, and then I reeled you in with my charming personality. And now we've been dating for 2 years, so who really
Holy
won?
crap! And they're both trans women.
Um, Trans, yes, women, no.
Okay.
Um, yeah, but yeah,
And
Joelle, like I said, you can find her profile. She's got an open profile.
Oh
She's
yeah,
very
I'm
public.
looking at it right now on
So
TBH.
yeah, yeah.
hot.
We
Um,
have 66 mutual people.
she's
Wow.
she's she's a delight. She is a one of a kind, I can tell you that. Um,
Including Mayor of Blandsville, May. I love her. She's from
hmm,
Utah.
um, yeah, that's
That's
the thing. Like
awesome.
a lot of these handles I know. Some people I have talked to, others I haven't. Like I don't really know May, but I am familiar. I think we follow each other.
Hmm.
Maybe. I don't know.
So, I guess like, how long do you plan on doing the whole like traveling around? Are you just basically going for a couple, like maybe like 6 months, a year? You just sort of like just gonna play it by ear?
My plan is indefinitely. Um, I like I said, I'm currently been going through the process of getting rid of a lot of my things, which I didn't have a whole lot to begin with. And then I'm just kind of writing out my lease at this point, which is up at the end of December. And then I'm not going to have a place. Like I'm not going to have an address of my own. I'm not going to have a job. I'm just going to kind of throw myself into the world and see what happens. But I will have, excuse me, I do have community and I have resources. Like I said, both of my partners, I'm going to be living like part-time with each of them basically, and then bouncing between the two. So they have time to do their own things in their own homes, but then I will come stay for like long visits in between. So that's kind of what's going to keep me sheltered is just like spending time with them. And we talked about all this like at great length, right? It's not like I'm just showing up and being like, how's me?
Yo, bitch.
And they're both poly themselves too, right? So they have
Yes.
and are they
Yeah.
is everybody in this like extended polycule like it's all cool, everybody's cool with the whole situation, the like it's the arrangements,
Yeah, to the
everything?
best of my knowledge. Like they don't, so my two partners don't date each other, like they've never met each other because I don't like I don't begrudge anybody who does like the throuple or like large polycule kitchen table poly kind of thing. But I'm very
Thruple.
much yeah, I'm very much like relationship anarchist. Which is that I just the way that I view my relationship to other people is like there's me and there's just everybody else. And whatever activities and amount of time feels right that I do with other people, I just do that. Like I have sex with friends with whom I don't really have a romantic or like dating attraction. And then I have other people who are very, very intimate and special to me to whom I'm not physically attracted. So I just kind of like I don't go into relationships with new human beings with any kind of intent or expectation, and I just let things go where they go. But to circle back to the original question, all of the relationships that I have, it's just like me and one other person and me and one other
Yeah.
person. There's not like interconnectivity between any of them.
Have
Thus far, I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. It just hasn't happened yet.
have have you always been like that, or is that just since you started transitioning?
Oh God, no. That's just since I started transitioning.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
So before I started transitioning, I was married for 11 years in a, at least by presentation, a cisgender heterosexual monogamous relationship.
That sounds
Um,
familiar.
Hmm.
yeah, can't put my finger on why. Um, and then when I came out, you know, my ex and I were like, okay, we'll try. And after a few months or so, we were like, oh, this isn't going to work. So we divided up our assets. We sold our house. That was the end of it.
It's cool that you gave
And
it a try
then
at least. I mean,
we did,
it's
yeah, yeah. Um, and so I started dating after a couple of months. You know, I took a couple of months to grieve and kind of get over it. And then I was like, I'm ready to date again. Um, and shortly after I got on the dating apps, I met my local partner, and they were already poly. And I wasn't at the time. I had still been dating like monogamously. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about this, but I guess like I like you, you like me. I guess I don't care if you have other partners. Like it doesn't really impact me much. I feel a little weird about it. Um,
were
and I
you
was
a
on the
jealous
fence.
type before or like
Oh, yes.
yeah,
Oh,
'cause that's
yes.
what I would like. I get like what the Genghis Khan kind of like
Yeah, like the song.
yeah. But yeah, that sort of personality is like I don't want you to have anyone but me. I'll have
Yeah,
several, but you can have me.
I was kind of like that before I started dating again after my marriage. And like I said, I met this person and they were already poly, and I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. I don't know how I feel about it, but like I like you, so I guess I'll try. And it wasn't
Yeah.
until about a month afterwards where I met somebody else and was interested in them, and then realized that I could just pursue that and wasn't going to be any trouble. And then I was like, oh, I'm all in on this now. And
It's that
yeah.
is you. Yeah. I'm kind of following your path on this. Like I started transitioning and I knew what polyamorism was, but I didn't like entertain it. But
Hmm.
the further I research into this thing, it's like, why should you depend on one person to fill all your cups? It's not like feasible,
It's
you
really not.
know?
And I don't
Yeah.
like I have problems the with cis heteronormativity, right? Of like people just never questioning their gender identity, regardless of whether or not you're trans. Like, I think it's still a good thing to be like, all of these social expectations and stuff, do these fit for me? You know?
Yeah.
And part of that is with relationships too, because I think it's a little bit unfair and unreasonable for people to expect one other person to meet all of their needs all the
Yeah.
time. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
really work in my experience.
It's way too much
Whereas
leaning on each other, and
it
it can
is,
get
and
stressful as fuck.
it breeds a lot of toxicity, I think,
Mm.
just like at the micro level on those relationships, but the macro level just socially in general. And I I really found that it worked really, really well for me. And anybody who's ever come to me and asked questions about it, I'm like, if you are curious, I suggest you read up on it and give it a try. I
Yeah.
think one of the things that's a little bit off-putting about it is because it forces you, in my experience, it forces you to be introspective and to really sit with uncomfortable feelings like jealousy or feelings of inadequacy or things like that. And you have to be able to communicate them. And I think that's where
Oh
a lot of
wow.
people are like, I don't know how to do this because we're not taught those skills.
Yeah.
We're taught find one person and be with them forever.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and
and
I know, especially with like where I grew up, everybody was taught you find one person who is the opposite gender from you. They have to be, the opposite gender. They have to be, I mean, largely like in your own socioeconomic sphere.
mhm,
Um, no, uh, nobody jumping, major socio classes, but also like, cause we had one gay kid in my high school and that was like earth shattering because there was
yeah,
like that's but like then I went back to Pride recently and there were like 10 people who were came out as either gay or lesbian or bi, and I was the trans person and they're like, oh wow, we didn't know that. It's like nobody knew because you weren't supposed
yeah.
to.
You
You
weren't
weren't.
supposed to know.
Yeah. But yeah, like I think that's it. Yeah, it does. Once people start acknowledging that, like, cool, I don't have to fit into this mold that my parents and my grandparents have forced me into.
Yeah, and
Right.
they call us groomers, but society's the biggest groomer here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. And I think it leads to like if we had a society and a culture that was just more open and tolerant and accepting of these things, I think a lot of people would be a lot happier. Because here's my hot take on people in general is that I think a lot more people are queer than they realize.
Yeah, absolutely. Or at least queer
I
curious.
yeah, I say this as a joke a lot of the time, but I'm like, you can be completely gay, but nobody's completely straight.
Yeah. Like so yeah, like honestly when my marriage broke up, my ex was essentially like, I'm not a lesbian. And it's like, but you like me though, right? And she's like, yeah, but you're gonna be a woman. And I was like, yeah, but you like me. Like it, I think it's just because she was raised like in a really conservative area and was just like, this is what you have to do. And it's like, no, you could like still like me. I have all the parts and they still work. Well, not anymore. Well,
Well,
I don't have
yeah.
them all anymore. Orchiectomy, yay. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like that was like the biggest thing is like just the appearance of being a lesbian was just out of the question.
Right. And that's very much social pressure and totally jumping tracks here because this is how my brain works. I actually would like to talk about my orchiectomy
No, yeah,
because I
absolutely.
think it makes for interesting conversation. Um, because I did mine in a non-traditional way. So uh, I'm assuming that most of the people who are inclined to watch this probably understand how they work, but just quickly, if you don't, um, like the most common way that I'm aware of is that they typically will like make a small incision in the scrotal sac, isolate the testes, make the cuts, stitch it back up, out the door, good to go. And I know a lot of like friends of mine, trans women or trans femmes in particular, have had that surgery, but then are doing it as part of like an escalation to having a full vaginoplasty and things like that, because they use the
Yeah.
scrotal skin to craft labia if you're going to have a vagina created. Um, but I knew I didn't want to go that far with mine. I'm like, I have no interest in having a vagina. I never have, but I don't want balls. Like I hate them. They're annoying. They're just causing me to have to take medication. They're a cancer risk at this point. I don't want kids. Like just get rid of them. Um, so when I was talking to my surgeon, I told him that, and he was asking what other surgeries I had planned, and I said none. I don't want any more surgeries. So um, he did this thing that he referred to as kind of like experimental, because in all the years he's been practicing, he's like, this was like the second one he'd ever done. And what it was that I requested, this was like
Wow.
by my request, was to have the orchiectomy as usual, but then to remove the scrotal skin as well. Um, and
Oh.
we had a lot of talks about it. It was like a 7 month long process. There was a lot of stuff going on. Um, and he asked me like 1,000 times during the procedure. He's like, "You're sure? You're sure? You're sure? You're sure that you're not going to want the other surgery later?" He goes, "Because we can do it, but then we're not going to really be able to like craft any labia for you, because that's the skin that we would use." And I was like, "I don't want it. Let's get rid of it." So my recovery process was like 2 to 3 weeks that I was bedridden, because it was like effectively an episiotomy, because they cut into the skin like basically just below where my dick attaches to me, and then all the way back to my anus almost. And then they cut in like an almond shape, like an eyeball almost kind of shape, to remove the skin, and then pulled the sides together and stitched them back up. So
Huh.
it's interesting now, like visually, because it's just like, obviously I've still got the part I wanted to keep. But below that, there's like no extra skin or anything. It's just like Barbie doll smooth. Um, and I just wanted to talk about
Wow.
that because it's a very unusual thing. So if
Yeah.
anybody happens to come across this, that is a thing that you can do. Your surgeon might ask you a billion questions about it, but
Yeah. Because that's what I was noticing. Because I had mine done on Monday.
Mhm.
Bree is our resident expert of the all the intricacies of it because she had hers more recently.
Couple of hours ago.
But I was terrified afterwards to like look down because I was just like, is it going to be this drastic difference? And honestly, I kept the gauze on. When I got done with the surgery, I had the gauze on and they were like, you can take it off as soon as you want, like to get ready to go home. And I was like, I'll just keep it on. So I kept it on like all night actually, and I ended up getting the chutzpah. I was gonna say getting the balls to look, but I didn't. Um, but like I looked at it and I was like, wow, it actually looks very similar. It just, the feeling is completely different, but the aesthetic is, yeah, when if you don't lose the skin, the appearance. Although I've heard that the skin atrophies after a while. Is
I
that?
believe that it does, yeah. And I can't
It
confirm or
does.
deny that because, like I said, it's gone. But
Yeah.
So
um,
I have a little insight on that if you want to hear it. Um, when I had my consult, my surgeon actually offered me your option, Ash. Like, she
oh,
said,
interesting.
it's becoming more common practice now. She was like, I can remove all the skin, or we can keep it. And she said verbatim, you have a dog, right? It's like, yeah. Like, do you remember doing his neutering? And then you see that like big league chew hanging down for a minute. And
Ew.
now you don't, and you don't. It's gone flat. So
Right.
there's nothing floating around in there to keep it stretched out and moving around. So eventually it's gonna pull up flat too. It's just not gonna be smooth like yours. It might
Yeah.
be a little bit ridgy, but it's eventually gonna go pull up flat too because there's nothing to stretch it outwards.
Yeah.
Right.
Does that?
So basically, she was like, if you decide to take that route, which I originally thought that I was not going to do it, but there's starting to be some latent thoughts in there that I should do it. Not now. I'm not looking forward to any sort of electrolysis on my pubic area at all, period. Um, but maybe. But she's like, if you keep the skin, we'll have the parts for later. And it's just going to go up flat
Mhm.
and then we can use it later.
Hmm.
So that was my experience, and I'm
Yeah. Yeah. It's
currently.
yeah. I've heard lots of people saying, yeah, that like if you want to if you wanted to use it and you wanted to have a lot of skin, you need to do like implants. Like apparently there's an ability to get like prosthetic testicles put in so that it keeps the skin stretched out, and that apparently gives you something for like maybe depth or I can't remember exactly what it was doing, but Yeah, mine was essentially orchiectomy without replacement. So,
Okay. I was
um,
just like, rock and roll, baby. Let's do it.
yeah,
Like,
or
Yeah.
find out what happens.
like, yeah,
Robin's actually doing what you did. She's going to
uh,
remove everything.
yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, honestly, like, and I've been wanting to do, I mean, when I was 16, 15, 16, something like that, I saved up enough rubber bands where I was just going to basically just wrap rubber bands around it and just all gone. I almost did, like, I started putting rubber bands on, and I was like, nope, nope, never mind, not doing this. But yeah, like, this has been kind of one of those things that I've wanted for, golly, 20 something years. So, um, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So I'm fascinated every time I hear anybody talk about their transition story because like for me, I feel like I took a largely atypical route, which is I just literally had no clue. The signs were there for sure, but I had no clue that I was trans until about 3 years ago, like just before I started my transition, because I am like I had a lot of weird feelings about stuff and like about my body and everything, but I just thought everybody did, right? I grew up in an area where these conversations didn't happen, these people didn't exist, like you just didn't talk about it. So
Yeah.
I didn't know any of the terminology or anything. And then when I moved up here, I still didn't for the first few years. But when I started working in the behavioral health hospital, once we got that open and running and we started taking patients, we came across, or rather, I came across my first like non-binary human that I had ever been aware of. And they use they them pronouns. And I was so frustrated because I was like, I don't understand. Like, there's two options. How can you not be either one? Because I still didn't have that. Like, this was all new to me, even at the age of 31. And so I was like, well, I'm a curious person. Like this frustrates me because I don't like not knowing things. So I'm going to do some research on it. I'm going to like look it up and read some things and see what I can figure out. And then I wound up on the gender wiki. Um, and I was reading about it and I saw that it was part of a series on like an umbrella series on transgender people. And I was like, I've heard that word before, but I still don't totally understand what it means. And then I read the page and I got real sweaty because I was like, oh shit, that's what it is to be transgender. And then I was on hormones 4 months later.
Wow.
My whole life
That's
I've just been
it.
walking around. Yeah, I've been walking around and I'm like, why are all these dudes cool with the fact they're not women? Like, what is it that's wrong with me that they're
Yeah.
all living their lives and I'm just constantly depressed? Because like all men feel this way. And then I learned out that no, men don't feel that way at all.
Yeah. Isn't that, I mean, that's the thing. Everybody, like, they're assuming that this is some sort of just trendy thing that we're doing because it's in vogue and everybody wants to be so open-minded and everything. And it's like, no, honestly, like, I wish I didn't feel this way. Like, I wish this wasn't who I was. I wouldn't wish this feeling on anybody. The feeling that you don't enjoy the body you were born in.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't match it because everybody assumes, oh, you just chose. When did you choose to be transgender? And it's like, never. Like, it was kind of thrust upon me. But yeah, you like. I get a bunch of people saying, why can't you just be happy in your skin? It's like, well, I just never could. I mean,
Like it's
I
real easy
can
to say
now.
when you are already happy in your skin to say it to other people, right?
Yeah.
It's yeah. I never understood why people like couldn't get that.
Yeah.
So
And I like I have a little bit of a different take on that too. Which is that like I haven't come across too many people in my own interactions. I know there are plenty of them out there, but I feel like a lot of my friends and stuff share similar sentiments. They're like, I wish that I weren't. I wish that my body just kind of matched what I wanted it to be the whole time, right? That I didn't have to suffer through all of this. And while I didn't enjoy the suffering and not understanding part, I honestly really like being trans. I really like it. And like the way that my body looks just looks right to me, to have these parts in this configuration and everything. Like it works for me. The part that I wish was different was that everybody else didn't choose to be shitty about it, right?
yeah,
I
it's
wish
true.
we lived in a world where it was okay to just be different from what the status quo is and that people wouldn't treat you terribly for it. Like that's the part
Yeah,
that I wish would change, but
that's
I'm honestly like cool with this body.
yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. That's if people were better about it. Like I went to a brewery today, and it was pretty conservative crowd, and I could just feel the daggers, the stares hitting me like daggers. But I felt good. I was like, I honestly feel really good about who I am. I'm finally on a path to
Mhm.
being in the body that I wanted to be in since I was little. I think, yeah, it's a lot of a lot of people are told that we're not. Then this is from my upbringing. A lot of us are told that we're not supposed to feel this way. And so when
Mhm.
I first came out, I remember talking with my wife, and this the second time coming out because I came out before, but talking with a therapist, and I was like, is there any way you can just like put electrodes on my brain and just shock me until I feel normal, until I enjoy this skin that I'm in? I was like, I will lose IQ points. I will go down. I will lose my sense of smell, my sense of taste, whatever it takes to enjoy this body that I was born in. And my ex-wife and the therapist were both just like, that's such a weird thing to do. And it's like, you don't understand how much I just want to feel like I'm not some sort of freak, like you're all making
Right.
me feel like unwanted
Yeah.
freak. Because of course, as soon as I came out as trans, nobody wanted, I got a divorce because nobody wanted to be married to a trans chick.
I
So
had I had a similar, I mean, I think a lot of us do, right? Is especially if we've already been in a long committed relationship and we come out, and then that was the case in my case where my partner was just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be married to a woman. I don't like, if that's what you
well,
want and
yeah,
that's you want to be happy, fine. But like, I don't want that for me. Um, and God, it warms my heart so much every time I see a couple who like survive through the transition and they like continue to be together and
yeah,
they're like, we're happier and healthier than we've ever been. I'm like, that's what a relationship
And
is.
yeah.
then they get
Um,
remarried. That always gets me.
oh yeah, yeah, like a new
It's
marriage
like
with
they have a
the
second ceremony and they're both in wedding dresses. I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm not
it's
crying, you're crying.
fuck.
it's just so interesting. And I know I continue, like I will say this every damn time it brings it up, but it's like it's just so crazy that, like, especially for my case, my ex would rather have a semi-suicidal drunk husband than a happy, very healthy wife. Which, I
Hmm.
mean, essentially is the same person. I'm still, terrified of horror movies. I still get real nerdy about tech. Everything is the same except for now I look a little bit better than she does. So,
Bam. Um, yeah,
Boom, roasted.
and I
boom.
remember I remember when I was going through my divorce, one of the things that was most distressing to me was I was like, no one's gonna love me. Like nobody's gonna want to date me. Like,
Yeah, that's why I went back in
because
the
I had this,
closet.
yeah, I had this person who was already committed to me, and like no one's gonna want a trans woman. And oh, how wrong I was, let me tell you. Um, I like I just sometimes think about teenage me, and I'm like, teenage me would be losing their absolute shit to see A, how I look now, but B, like because I could not, I was awkward and gangly. Like I just could not get dates. Like I did not have sex for the first time until I was like, I think 20, 21. And which is fine, but it
Yeah,
was like that teenage pressure of like, oh, you have to do it. And like all my friends were hooking up and I was just like, oh, um, but teenage me now to know like what current me is up to and like the fact that I just like finally am comfortable and confident and can just approach people and like it start a conversation and like have a bit of a history and I'm like, I know this is only the first date, but um, I love that for teenage me, right? Who just spent so much time feeling invalid because like I was not getting any
yeah.
action of any kind, and
Well,
um,
yeah. Like I know, especially with when I was growing up, like that was my validation was a lot of sex. So like after in college and after college and up until I started transitioning, it was a lot of having a lot of random sex with a lot of women because I wanted to be as close to that body as possible. And I was like, if I can trick this woman into thinking that I'm attractive, maybe I am. But I never felt like it. It's like the more I did it, the worse I felt. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, no, the whole thing about going back and showing teenage you what current you looks, because I know honestly teenage me would be like all those swimsuits and everything that I got and hoarded in my like in the bottom of my sock drawer. And be like, hey, by the way, keep those. Like
You keep those,
you're
yeah.
gonna wish you
That's
had them.
that's a clue.
Yeah.
It's a secret tool that will help us later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Have either of you run across that comic? That's got I think it's got like four panes, and it shows four different kids, and the first kids are like their adult selves are showing up through this time portal hole and just like poking their head through. And I think one of them, the kid's like, their adult version pops through as a fireman. He's like, "You're gonna be a fireman, you know, whatever." And then the very last one is this little boy, and then there's a woman popping through the portal hole, and all she says is, "You're gonna be fine."
Aw,
I
that's
was
so
like,
sweet.
That is so freaking cute. Oh,
damn.
I mean, isn't
I
that the
know.
thing though? Like, I honestly, yeah, I before I came out, I was on a path to drink myself to death before 40.
Same.
And yeah, I was just miserable. Gained a whole bunch of weight, was eating just terribly, and hated myself. But
Hmm.
um when you like, was there any catalyst for you? Was it like, was there a defining point where you were like, this is like it tipped you over the edge? It said like, here's my like.
Oh God, yes, and I will remember it till the day I die. Um, I So I had been every year on my birthday. I've always been the type like at my birthday and at like Christmas time or whatever, typically when gifts are given socially, I always buy something for myself, something that I want totally selfish, just for me, from me. And my 31st birthday was coming up. It was a couple of weeks out, and I was like, what do I want? I was walking around at work and I was like, what do I want to do? Because I had a lot of time to think at my job. And I was like, what am I going to do for my birthday this year? Like, what do I want to get myself? I'm like, I just bought a house. I have enough shit. Like, I don't really need any things. I'm like, maybe I should do some kind of experience or something that I've always wanted to do. What have I always wanted to do? And I'm like, I have always kind of wanted to play with like more feminine, like socially feminine things. So, like wearing eyeliner or maybe getting like a cute skirt or something. And I was like, maybe this will be my queer year. Like, maybe I'll just kind of let myself push off the constraints of social expectations and just kind of really get to know myself and see what
Yeah.
kind of things I want and like other people be damned, right? Um, so then I started looking it up on my phone. I had a hammock in the backyard that my ex had got me for my birthday. So like those couple weeks after my birthday, I was like, well, how would this work? Like I'm going to do this. That's my treat to myself this year. So how does it look? And I started looking around on Google. Because this is the actual coming out story. Like I like to tell the one about the non-binary thing. That's the one that got the wheels turning. But the actual like, oh, my egg cracked moment was a few months later, and it was around my birthday. So I'm going through all of this, and I'm sitting in the hammock in my backyard in the summer, and I just keep looking up photos, and I'm just seeing all of these like gorgeous people, like very feminine, um, and
That's awesome.
and I keep coming across words like genderqueer or gender nonconforming. So I was looking into those kinds of things, and maybe that's kind of me because I'm seeing these men like professional men at universities and lawyers and things like that who like show up in like a blazer top, a pencil skirt, and heels. But like like they're men, they identify as men, he him pronouns, whole package, but they wear these clothes. And I was like, see, I could really get down with that because like I love feminine clothing. But like obviously I'm a man, right? So I was looking into those things, I was looking into them, and then I just kind of thought about it more and more for a couple of weeks. And one night I was lying in bed, couldn't sleep. It was almost midnight. And I was like, I kind of want to take it a little further. Like maybe I'll do drag. Like maybe I'll be a drag queen. I'm like, that sounds kind of fun. Like I get to do the whole thing like on a weekend or whatever, but then go back to totally being a man during the weeks and stuff. I was like, maybe I'll do drag. I could get into that. And I thought, what what would because I need a stage name or something, because they all do. Because I didn't really know anything about drag. I just was aware that it was a concept. And I was like, I need a stage name or something. What would I go by? And I was thinking of that. And then I thought for a while, I'm like, if I had been a girl, what name would I want? Like what would I call myself? And then I was sitting there and like just a few minutes after midnight, I was like, Ashley. And then it was just like this tunnel of like all the way back to when I was 5 years old, crying, literally crying in my bedroom closet and wanting to be a
Oh,
girl. And suddenly it clicked. And it was just like everything that ever happened in my life that made sense all happened. Like it just
yeah.
completely blew my mind. And I was like, holy shit. Like it's always been Ashley. I'm like, oh my God, I'm fucking trans. And then I got up and I just went and sat on the couch because I
Wow.
was like, I'm not going to sleep tonight. And I was just like this anxious energy. I was just shaking. I was like, oh my God, this is it. And like I took so many years of existentialist philosophy. I've done drugs. I've done all kinds of things to try to figure out what this feeling inside of me was. And I'm like, and that's what it is. It's that I'm living a lie. Like the
Yeah.
person I really am, I've just been shoving down because I've been afraid. And like the next day, I called my sister. I was like, I have to talk to you. Like, meet me after work. I don't care. I will drive however far. Um, and I told her, and then I told my ex like later that day or the next day, and then it was just all from there. But yeah, it was a very pinpoint moment where I was just like, holy shit. Like
Yeah.
this all makes sense suddenly. A lifetime of confusion just snapped into frame.
Well, and it's like all the possibilities of things that you thought were just out of reach. I know when I first came, like, had the realization that I could do it. I mean, real quick, I was talking to a friend who
Mm-hmm.
told me that she was a really cute girl. I was very interested in her. She's like, "Hey, sorry, I'm a lesbian," and I was like, "Oh, I always wanted to be a girl." And she's like, "That's not something you can joke about." And I was like, "No, this and this and this." And she's like, "Well, why don't you do it?" And for me, it was just like, oh. And like, all the possibilities of the times that I'd seen like women wearing, adorable clothing, and I was like, I wish I could have worn that. It all became very real. I'm like, this is something. It's not something that I should just sit there and idealize anymore. It's like something I can actualize.
I can actually do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. But
Um,
but yeah, that's like you start realizing this is something. Don't let your dreams be dreams. I guess.
yeah.
For how
And
dumb that sounds, but
no, but I get it. And I remember having these conversations with my ex, like first after I came out, because she had, rightfully so, she just had some concerns because we were talking about these things. We were talking about because our house became very queer suddenly. So those kinds of things were coming up in conversation. It's just like trans women in particular, but also like drag performers and things like that. We started having those conversations. And I was trying to talk to her and understand what it was she had, like, why did she have a problem with me being trans? Why wasn't it working for her? And these other things. And not really in a sense of like trying to convince her per se, but just trying to understand what footing she was on. Um, and she was talking about the fact that she's like, I really have a problem with it because um, they're like, and I don't want to misrepresent what she said. So I'm just going off of the best of my memory, but I recall her argument basically being like one of the problems she had with it is that her experience or understanding is that a lot of trans women become hyper femme and basically like reinforce misogynist stereotypes, and those are arguments that I have also heard other places, right, and I don't
yeah,
agree with.
I can
um
do that.
but at the time we did talk about that, and I was kind of fearful of that too when I was first coming out, because I was like, I don't, these concepts were all new to me at the time, but I was like, I don't really want to feel like I'm doing harm, right? Like my existence is harmful in any way or anything like that. Um, and I've come a very long way since that now, like, much better understanding of these things and stuff. But at first I was like, oh gosh, like, is it bad of me to do this? But I was like, I have a right to exist,
Yeah.
like I deserve to be happy just as much as everybody else.
I mean, the whole hyper fem. I mean, honestly, I guess I can kind of see it because I am kind of going in that route of like, I'm killing myself to diet and to work out and to, stopping drinking and everything just to like look better in a skirt and doing all these like these Botox and filler and microneedling and cool sculpting. And I could see basically the people who were saying, well, you're just, you know, pissing money away on aesthetic things to look more femme. And it's like, I mean, yeah, but that's kind of also what I want to do. I know a lot of people who don't do it.
Right,
And
right.
because I'm doing it doesn't mean that like it's, I guess, any more, any less valid um, as a personal choice. But
I do
Right.
have I have a theory on that because it's kind of happening to me. Um, like we go our entire lives and then we make this decision, and then the femininity rolls into the equation and you hit it hard because you've missed out on it for how many decades.
yeah.
So you kind of want to try it out. Like, yeah, am I guilty of buying a bunch of fancy shit and,
Oh,
overdressing at work? Hundo P, like almost every day. Um, it's fun for me.
yeah.
Can I dumb it down? Yes, I'm dumbed down right now.
Well,
I'm got the
I
t-shirt
mean,
on.
and I feel like cis women got to experience that. They got to be, 18 and experiment with their sexy side, and they got to be 21 and be the have the litany of sexy Halloween costumes. And I feel like everybody who transitions, especially later on, like especially post 30 transitions, like I feel like me personally, I've regressed to a time where I wanted to have been a woman. Like I've regressed to about like middle of college. And I did
Mhm.
act that way. I acted like I was a 38-year-old college student essentially for a while. And I feel like most people, when they see that, they're just like, oh, well, you're 38 years old. You need to act like a 38-year-old woman. It's like, no, 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 no.
No, no, no. I didn't get my 20s,
Yeah.
bitch. So I'm getting them back.
Yeah.
Also, nobody has to act like anything ever, right? Like, don't tell me
Yeah.
what to
Yeah.
do, you know?
I'm a Toys R Us kid. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like genuinely how I spend a lot of my free time, which is all of it these days. I really like to watch like cartoons. I like cartoons, and not just ones aimed at adults, but like ones that are aimed more for children, because it's still good programming. I enjoy it, and I'm just at the point where I'm like, I'm done. I am done living for other people's expectations or standards, right? Like the things that
Yeah.
make me happy and bring me joy, I'm gonna do. And I don't care if you're like, oh, you're an adult, you shouldn't be watching Bluey, Like I fucking love Bluey,
Bluey's
and
great. I
you're not
love
gonna tell me that I can't do it.
Yeah.
Well, and
There's
that's
the real version of Bluey right there.
I mean, and that's the thing. I feel like I catch so much grief from trans women who are that sort of the very almost militaristic like trans women. When I'm like, yeah, I want to look pretty, they're like, you're doing that just for the patriarchy. And it's like, no, I'm doing it because when I look in the mirror, I really enjoy what I see. There's just this. I feel like there's both like the whataboutism is just crazy with some of these people. It's like,
And
well, the people on the right think that I'm trans, so of course I'm going to be immediately a drag queen, and then the people on the left are like, you're just trying to be a Stepford wife, and it's like, no, I don't want to fit into either one of y'all's molds. So like,
you're like,
lay
I'm
the
doing
fuck
my thing,
off.
just go away.
Yeah.
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 But and that's like, kind of going back to the thing with my ex, and what I hopefully remember her saying correctly is that like there are so many arguments and all these things to be made about all of this stuff, right? But in my opinion, what a lot of it boils down to is misogyny. And it applies to us just the same as it applies to cis women. And I think that's why there can be this like almost overcorrection sometimes
Yeah.
with trans women. Is like I'm starting already behind, quote unquote, where social expectations of what womanhood and femininity are supposed to be. So not only do I want to get to that point where I'm like dressing and acting and behaving the way that social standards dictate are appropriate for a woman, which are bullshit. Um, but then there's like that need to go that step further and really
Yeah.
be extreme about it, because there's like we're dealing with dysphoria and all these other things too. So I understand how it can come off that way, and I really like I've experienced these pressures too, right? I'm not immune to them. Um, I get that, it's just to be a feminine person is hard, and there are a lot of expectations and things that are put on us. And this is one of the things that, like, personally, I love about trans masks, um, trans men in particular, because like they transition and they're just like dudes. They're just like regular dudes, just doing dude stuff. Um, and I love that. I love that. It brings me so much joy, and because maybe I'm wrong. Like maybe this is going to get me canceled, right, for having opinions. But I feel
Dare
like,
you?
how dare I have opinions? Trans people across all spectrums, all identities, just face challenges. That's simple truth of the matter. And trans feminine people in particular, I think, are hit especially hard because feminine people are hit hard in general. Like there's all these expectations of what a woman can't be, of what a woman should be, how a woman should dress and act, and blah, 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 blah. And I feel like masculine people, while they definitely have things that apply to them, it's just different in a way. Where with feminine folk, it's like more outward presenting things that are policed, and with masculine people, it tends to be a little bit more, inward. And this is just based off my experience. Like pre-transition, it didn't matter a whole lot. Like, I could roll out of the house with unbrushed hair and stubble and just dirty clothes. Nobody really gave a shit. But God forbid that I have feelings and express them,
Yeah.
versus now, like nobody
Wow.
really cares. Like I cry constantly about everything. I literally cried to 2 different episodes of Bluey last night.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, no,
but
yeah.
but but now it's much more things. Like I get a lot of the comments that I get now aren't so much about me as a person, but they're more about my appearance. Like
Yeah.
my appearance has become much more the center. I hope all of that follows logically because
Yeah, no,
Oh yeah.
um,
absolutely. Yeah.
and and so that's I just think all of that kind of connects around basically like Eurocentric standards of beauty and like patriarchal systems of oppression and things like that. It's all related. It's all
Well,
related.
and the thing that I know, I mean, God, if people are listening to these podcasts sequentially, they're gonna be like, Danny, shut the fuck up about it. But there's like the thing that I always go back to, and I kind of feel badly about sort of dwelling on it, but especially today when I was out at the brewery with the really conservative people, is pretty privilege is kind of one of those things that, like, if cishet guys see a trans woman, but they find that trans woman attractive, they're much more likely to give us a pass. They're like, "Oh, I see you. I think you're attractive. So go ahead and you do you. You're following the requirements in the made up requirements of what a woman is supposed to look like in the church and whatever." And
Yeah. Like
so
you're
they
doing it. Carry on.
yeah, and so they give us this pass, but it's yeah, it feels like we're always being judged if we don't match what they find attractive. And it does, I mean, it kind of sucks because I realized that if I were to falter in any step, maybe I don't put my makeup on quite right, or I don't do my hair up enough, then that pretty privilege goes away, and I start getting ostracized for being a trans woman at that point.
Mhm.
They're okay with that trans woman as long as they can fantasize about fucking us.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't like, I'm not going to mention any names in particular because I don't want to tear anybody down or anything like that. But you see it in general on like, um, on the internet or in just more traditional media and stuff like that. It's the same, cis women and trans women. The ones who are really getting the airtime and the representation are the ones, generally speaking, who are closest to these ideas of like what a woman is supposed to be and how a woman is supposed to look. And I really like seeing pushes for representation, and people with different types of looks, people with different skin tones and body builds and all those things is good. Because you see, even within the trans community, right, we're not immune to that. I mean, like, go on Reddit or some other place where there are a lot of people showing photos, and you're going to see a very specific set of characteristics over and over and over again in the most elevated voices.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, this is a social problem, right? And it applies to cis women, it applies to trans women, it applies to masculine people. I mean, we're all trapped by it at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Well, I mean, even with Reddit though, like I've noticed if you go on Reddit though, unless you turn off like hot posts in like a trans community, you still have the chasers who will go in there and they'll upvote the ones they find attractive. And so of course you go on, if you have top posts set or hottest posts, of course it's all the top ones are always going to be the 20 something bombshell that 110 pounds, and scantily clad trans woman, and it's like, okay, well, that's not really what we're all like, but yeah, I think that's just media in general, and like you get
Yes.
it's what sells, and of course, even on Reddit, they're definitely not immune to sex selling on even the trans subreddits, because it's like, cool, you get a bunch of chasers on there. I'm an appreciator. It's like, oh no, you just want to
I'm
look
an
at something you can fuck.
appreciator. Um,
So
and so these are like generally, these are topics I don't tend to get into much because, it's not that I don't want to talk about them or that I don't think about them or like to have discussions about it, but I also just like I understand that with the way that my genetics are and the way that hormones have hit me and everything like that, like I'm aware that I fall within the purview of conventional pretty. And
Mhm.
it really, I tend to like step back and just keep my opinions to myself and not talk about like trans issues and misogyny and all of those things because I'm aware of the position from where I'm operating, right? Because there are a lot of things that other people deal with that I don't because I get that social pretty privilege.
Exactly.
And I try to be really mindful of that. So like this is
yeah,
even just some of the things we've been talking about here, like I'm a little bit uncomfortable. I mean, they're good conversations. I want to have them, but it's typically outside of the stuff that I like to talk about just because I feel like it's one of those situations, right? Like, well, of course you would say that, like it doesn't apply to you and all of that. And that's not to say that I'm not, that I don't struggle with the same things. I mean, I struggle with my body image. I have eating disorder problems and things like that. Like it affects me just as much as anybody else. But again, Dani, like you were saying, right, is that socially it's like, well, you look like you're doing the right thing. Like we're gonna go ahead
mhm.
and tolerate you. And it honestly feels kind of icky to me a lot of
it
the
It
time.
does.
it
Like I
like
absolutely see some of our sisters just getting wrecked on, and
yeah,
it's because they don't fall into the category of the three people in this room right now. And
yeah,
And
they're far from it. And that's not a bad thing at all. But I just see them getting completely pounded by these people. And it's because they don't fall into this fucking category.
I get really upset when anybody does it, but it's infuriating to me when I see trans feminine people just shitting all over other trans feminine people
Oh yeah.
for
It's fuck
for
them.
not passing or for not doing things right or whatever. And I'm like, we're put that mean girls shit away. Like we are
Yeah.
all struggling with the same thing. And at the end of the day, it
yeah,
doesn't matter how hard you like,
It's the
you
you should
know,
do this. It's like, don't tell me what I should
exactly.
do.
yeah.
I'm
I
like,
mean,
because when
can
they come for us, they're coming for all of us. It doesn't matter what you look like. Like, so
yeah.
don't like solidarity is the key here, right? Don't tear this already endangered community apart further.
Well, yeah, and I mean, isn't that's kind of the thing that I've seen the media trying to do lately with the LGBT community in general. I was down in Key West and went to a LGBT bar and was talking to these two gay guys. This is before I came out as I was still on hormones, but I was still in boy mode, and I was talking to him, and I was like, yeah, so I see a lot of rainbow flags. I don't see a lot of trans flags, and like, yeah, we're more LGB without the T, and kind of wanting to. I think the media is pushing us as we're the freaks. We're the ones who are choosing to do this because it's apparently, I guess they're cool with gay, lesbian, bi being a mental, being a personality trait, but an identifying marker, but trans is not for them. And yeah, like basically just adding a dividing line between the LGBT community. But I feel like it's just one of those things that they've realized they can do it, and they hate us all anyway. But they're like, if I can make y'all hate each other, and that's the same thing in the trans community. They're like, if I can make we can give Blair White a bunch of airtime and have her basically shit on all the other trans women and make the ones who are comfortable sitting in their pretty privilege, um, make them hate the bricks out there who aren't doing anything. I know when we go live, and if we have somebody who doesn't meet the conventional pretty privilege vibe, and they join the live, and all the guys jump on and start saying like oh, XYZ, you're so pretty, you're the most beautiful person. I mean, I've been that other person who's been on with somebody who's quote unquote pretty, and seen them getting all the praise. I'm just sitting there like, wow, I feel like a piece of garbage over here. Like, maybe I didn't
Yeah.
do my makeup quite right, but it does tear, like at that point I start getting resentful of the other person. I'm like, well, she's not that pretty. She's too skinny, too tall. Look at that nose and all those things. And yeah, it just like, yeah, the whole hating. I'm sorry, this has gone on for a lot longer than I meant to, but
No,
um,
it's okay.
the whole like tearing each other down just because you don't match what the other person considers. But also, I mean, like, for me personally, I know a lot of people get mad at me for wanting to put a lot of effort into my appearance, and so that's a valid thing. I think I get a lot of grief for like wanting to be pretty, wanting to be popular on Instagram and everything, from people who don't, which is fine. But if I were to go back and say, look, you don't want to be popular on Instagram, you're an idiot, I'd catch grief for that.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
It's,
So
you know,
yeah,
I and it's funny that you mentioned that just going on longer than you thought, because I've been over here laughing in my head a little bit, because this is how it is with me, right? Like I show up to any kind of event or social thing like this, and then I'm just like, hey, life of the party, like, you want to talk about sex and being kind of a hoe. Anyway, let's get very existential and social. Like, let's discuss some very deep and
you know,
sensitive social issues while we're
honestly
at
though,
it.
but for our podcast, like, this is the kind of stuff I think our listeners, people who want to listen to the podcast, want to hear about. Because I feel like I've gotten hit up a lot recently by people saying I'm about to start HRT, or I'm a couple months in, as opposed to being like, talking about like the intricacies of sex, which yeah, we
Right.
could, but it's like knowing, the pretty privilege exists, and even if you don't fall into the quote unquote, the stereotypical mold, you are still a valid person, and we still love you,
Yes. Yes.
and to not fall down that rabbit hole of like trying to live somebody else's transition.
Right. Yeah, and these are things that are very near and dear to my heart, because you see a lot of it, like, if you were to go off my Instagram profile, right? I try very hard to make it a good slice of life. Like, I really try to not pull any punches. Like, I have days where I'm like, I'm hot, fucking look at this. And then I have other days that I'm like, I haven't left my apartment in a week. I haven't showered in 3 days, and I have been crying constantly,
Yeah,
because I try to just be, because like I'm a whole complete human being, you know.
yeah,
I like, and I don't, I'm trying really hard to not be one of those accounts that is constantly pushing like, I'm just living an awesome life,
yeah,
look how I'm always put together and everything, because that's not the case. And transitioning, just like with anything else in life, there's so many layers to it. It's so complicated, it's diverse, and every single person's experience is different.
yeah,
Um, and
absolutely.
and like with so many other things, right? This ties into so many grander cultural issues and social issues and things like that, that I think there's a lot of content to talk about. There's a lot to discuss. And there are so many things that, like, I had no idea when I started my transition were going to be an issue. I didn't realize that, like, other people were going to treat me some of the ways that they did. I didn't realize that there were some things that I was going to go through that just nobody held my hand or told me about beforehand. And I didn't realize, like, how many moving parts of the society around me actually impacted the way that I felt about myself and the way that
Yeah,
I perceive myself since transitioning. And these are all things that, there's very, like, broad spectrum questions that you see a lot when early on in transition. It's like, oh, what's it going to do to my body? What does it cost? All these different things. But then the longer you get into it, in my experience, it becomes much more nuanced and subtle, and it starts to become very introspective, and like, there's
yeah,
kind of this give and take between what are the changes that are happening inside of me mentally and emotionally, and how are those impacted or being reflected back at me by the society around me. And this is just kind of the stuff that I think about on my own all the time. So
yeah.
it just, you give me a platform to start talking, and I'm like, here's all this other existential
Yeah,
nonsense that we never
yeah,
even considered.
Hello.
yeah, no,
Yeah, like,
absolutely. I mean,
hi.
yeah, it is. There's so many extra little like things that I never would have thought about with this transition. It's like there that, yeah, like you said, like I wish people had mentioned how people are going to treat me,
Mhm.
how am I going to feel about surgeries later on versus now, or at the beginning versus now. I like one of the big things is when I first started transitioning, I had so many thongs. I thought this is going to be great. I'm going to wear thongs all day. I have not worn a fucking thong in 6 months, and I don't really plan to. But there's all these things that I think when we first were getting on it, for me personally, I was on testosterone and I was like, this is going to be hot. I want to fit into the hot mold. And this is what's hot. This is what I think it's hot when a woman does. And then you start realizing that, no, that sucks to do. Those things are comfortable as fuck.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, that kind of like part of the reason that these more like sensitive and very thought-provoking issues I don't always like to talk about, especially on camera, is that I very much have an ADHD brain. And like I'll start a thought and then never finish it. So then it sounds like I'm saying one thing when I was really trying to say something else. And this is like going back to like the hyperfemininity and like my ex's thing and all that. Was the point of all that was I experienced that in my own transition. Like when I started transitioning, I was like, I fell into the same trap, right? But I thought about that a lot. Um, when I was like, oh, I have to wear a certain type of clothes. I have to have my nails painted all the time. I got to do my hair. I have to put
Yep.
on makeup. I need to make sure that my body is completely free of hair and things like that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I'm
and
here now.
and and that, yeah, and that's kind of like going all the way back to the points I was making earlier, which is like we're bound by those same principles of like this kind of that concept of right, like we'll tolerate you if you're doing all the things you're supposed to do. um and there's that hyper femininity, at least in my experience. When I first came out, I was like, oh, there's all these things I have to do to be a woman, to be a real woman and be perceived as a woman. And now, like 3 years in, like I don't, I don't shave my underarms anymore ever. I haven't worn a bra since I quit my job. Like it's just a lot of things because I'm like, I'm just comfortable in my skin now.
Yeah.
And my version of femininity is just mine. It's not, I'm not saying everybody else has to do it this way. And the way that I do it doesn't always check off all those boxes of what's socially expected. Because like I shave my legs when I feel like it. Sometimes I don't. I'll just go around in shorts with like hairy ass legs. But to wrap all of that up and put a bow on it, it's just that was one of those things that nobody told me when I started my transition. Like there's going to be a lot of outside pressure you're not expecting, and things that were
Mm-hmm.
there socially that may have been affecting
Mm-hmm.
you subconsciously, in like a way you weren't aware of, are going to become very apparent. And you're going to kind of have to reckon with those things. Um, so it's really been a really interesting journey. And like I said, I'm only 3 years in, and I'm still just like, it feels like a lifetime that I've been
Yeah.
doing
Oh
this,
yeah.
because of how much I've learned about myself, how much I've grown, how much more concerned I've become about social issues, and just like being gentle and kind to other people just because they deserve it, because they're
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah. Be
Quite a
be
trip.
be cool. Yeah. Be cool to everybody. Everybody be cool to everybody. Just
Yeah.
stop being dicks.
And I was one of those like pre-transition, um, was like kind of incel fashy sort of like, small town farm boy kind of vibes. Um, and I am totally not any of those things anymore. Like completely the opposite. Um, but it takes a lot of introspection and deconstruction of learned
Yeah.
behaviors and things. So
Oh, it sure does. Absolutely.
That's got deep. This is awesome.
yeah.
I guess, yeah. Bree, did you? I'm sorry. I've realized like in terms of the hosting, I took over all that time. Do you have anything, Bree? That like I feel like you have a
It's
lot
okay.
of.
I've just been muting myself to cough and then
Oh,
like
poor
having a
thing.
bad time with that.
Oh
Um.
Um,
no.
no, I mean, there's some things that you've said that made me realize that, like, for one big one, I've been my early on in my outing, I was breaking my neck to meet these social norms and everything, and full makeup, all this shit. And I've even turned around on what I said earlier about like, oh, I'm just catching up on my 20s and decking it out. No, I was trying so hard to meet that part that everybody expected of me. And now I'm doing more of myself than I was way earlier. Exactly.
Mhm.
Like I don't do my full face makeup anymore. I do my eyes and that's it. And I just kind of roll with it. And I'm learning that it's working out better than, trying to,
People like it
spend
when you're
45
happy.
minutes in the morning. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Happiness, exuding happiness makes everybody, yeah.
like 6 months
Um,
ago, if I was looking like this, going out in public, like I like got prep for surgery, no makeup, no whatever. And I'm fine with this now. Like I could go out and be fine and be, a fall risk right here.
oh, poor thing. Oh,
We love endings.
baby.
And yeah, we're all good. So yeah, that kind of set that struck a harp string for me. And your stories, Ashley, on your Instagram, they're incredible. Like I could be stuck.
Really?
Listen, like I can get stuck in the Insta matrix for so long. And then I hit your stories and it's so grounding. Like it just pulls me out like the red pill. I'm like,
Aw.
holy shit. Like, yeah, I have been in my apartment for 3 days also. And I feel like absolute shit. So it's very connecting to see, the non-fakeness being broadcasted out.
Yeah.
Thank you. That
Yeah.
really means a lot to me. And I've gotten that comment numerous times from a bunch of different people, like in person, Instagram friends. They're like, you just have this way about you of saying things that are like, holy shit, you know? And I feel kind of silly because I'm like, I am just nonstop running my mouth and nonsense is coming out. Like my brain's 1,000 other places, and I'm just like saying
Yeah.
whatever falls out of my head. And then people are like, wow, that's really inspiring. And I'm like, I don't think that you should necessarily be looking to me for inspiration. I'm just kind
Yeah.
of a bimbo.
Uh,
But thank you. That's meaningful to me.
for
If not inspiring, it is insanely grounding for
Yeah.
sure. It's
um
like
Um,
ropes the old hot air balloon back down.
for people who are wanting to dig into that, what is your Instagram? We're gonna put it right above you right when you say
oh,
it.
my handle is Meadow of Ashes 17, all one word.
Awesome.
Um,
And you have a link
and
tree.
I have some links, yes, that you can find on my page. There's not a whole lot going on there, but I'll leave it to you to explore them if you wish and see what's kind of in
Yeah.
there. It's some fun stuff.
One of the things we do like to ask our guests, and we didn't prep you for this one. Everyone who's listening now, I got yelled at last time for prepping our guests, so scolded, not yelled at. Actually, what is
Publicly.
your transition theme song?
Oh God.
See, that's the reaction that Rachel wanted.
It's
So
okay.
the first thing that comes, I was actually just thinking about this today. You thought you caught me off guard, but you
Damn
didn't.
it.
Um, is oh, now I'm totally blanking on the name of it. I can't
Details. We
remember,
can
damn
usually
it.
shop it and come up with it.
Um, it's I think it's a song I believe by Citizen Soldier, and um, I can't quite remember the lyrics of it, but it's basically it sounds like the lyrics to me sound like they're much more meant in terms of no, what the fuck am I talking about? That's not the song. That's one of the songs. It's Stone Sour's Through Glass. That's my
Stone
number one.
Sour. Okay. Stone
Stone
Sour.
Sour Through Glass. And it's
Oh
it's
yeah.
hit me ever since I started my transition because like one of the phrases that's repeated it during the song is I'm looking at you through the glass, don't know how much time has passed. And that's something that's always hit me very deeply because like my whole life every time I've looked at my own reflection it never felt right.
Yeah.
And so that song has always stuck with me. And then the other one that I was referencing it much more has to do with like disordered eating and body image and stuff, but that's probably my number two.
Interesting.
Hey, the rest of those lyrics are really good too. Oh
Oh
God, it
yeah, they're
feels
all
like
good.
forever, but no one ever tells you that forever feels like home sitting all alone inside your head.
Yeah. It just was like my whole pre-transition experience summed up into like one 3-minute song.
Wow.
That's a great one. That's awesome. I
It
love
is a good one. It makes me want to change mine because mine's all been really
Oh no,
shitty.
yours is great.
What was yours?
There's deepness. Mine is Blonde by Glades. It's basically
I
like
don't
throw
know that
away all
song.
your
I'll have to
past
look into it.
problems and dye it all blonde. Go have fun.
take
Okay.
put
Hell yeah.
all of his stuff on the front lawn
It
and
is a
light it up.
really fun song. Like
The hedonist in me is all about it. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. But yeah, so yes, we've covered how people can reach you. I guess yeah. Do you all have any final thoughts on things? I mean, any parting words you want to pass on to the viewers? I know we talked a lot about self-appreciation and things like that. Do you have any messages, like parting words for folks who are listening?
I do.
I
I'll
was
go
like, I don't
after
know
you.
that I do. You can go first, Bri, and I'll think if I have anything.
Okay. There's something that's dear, like I will preach to the end of my days, which depending how tonight goes, maybe tomorrow.
Might be the drugs
Sh-
talking.
This shit hurts so much.
Oh God.
So as far as the pretty privilege goes, I want to make it very known and important that when it comes to transitioning, you have to take the word comparison out of your head. You cannot compare yourself to other people, or else it's just going to end shitty. Because if you just hold these people with impossible standards up on a pedestal, it is going to tear you down 100%. You have to find your own path and your own comfortability instead of like, again, I'm not telling you what to do. It's just, experience and just how I feel about the whole thing. Because I started that way. I took these impossible standards and these impossible goals, and I did surpass my original. Like, everybody does the gender swap on FaceApp, and that's usually a huge egg crack. I have
Selfies.
surpassed what my original picture was by 10,000%, but I was still holding these people up and be like, why can't I be like them? You cannot be like them because you are you and you need to forge your own path. So take comparison out of your vocabulary when it comes to this transition train track.
Hell yeah. I love it.
Those are really good parting words. I don't really know that I have any other than just like something that I say often, which is you, whomever you may be watching or listening, you are valid in your identity and you are worthy of love and gentleness and kindness and softness. And you do not have to earn those things. Those things are your birthright. You deserve gentleness and to be loved and to love. And you don't have to earn it.
I love it.
Them's good parting words too.
Yeah. And yeah.
Birthright. Still
Yeah.
in that.
And yeah, on that note, everybody listening, yeah, we appreciate you. We love you. Feel free to reach out to any of us on Instagram. I am that QT Danny B. Bam. We have Bri Saint Marie and Meadow of Ashes 17.
Yes.
And Ashley, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I had
Absolutely.
so much fun.
You're incredible.
Well, everybody, stay tuned for the credits, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.
This has been a production of Girl Dad Girls Podcast. Check out new episodes every Thursday. If you are interested in knowing more, please email info@girldadgirls.com or find us on Instagram @girldadgirls. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.